This movie just seems to be preaching to the people that are just going to cheer and not actually think. And this should have been a movie that causes people to think, because if people thought, then maybe those that are on the fence, those that want to believe in God and just aren't capable of it, which those atheists do exist.
By your show because you pray to Jesus in every episode.
If we disown him, he'll disown us.
A 12-year-old watches his mother dying of cancer. A God who would allow that is not worth believing in. Life is really a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury and signifying nothing.
Name? Wheaton. Josh Wheaton. Philosophy 150. You might want to think about a different instructor. Come on, man, it can't be that bad. Think Roman Coliseum, people cheering for your death.
I am Professor Radisson, and this is Philosophy 150. I would like to bypass senseless debate altogether and jump to the conclusion, which every sophomore is already aware of: there is no God. All that I require from each of you is that you fill in the papers I've just given you with 3 little words: God is dead. Mr. Wheaton, is something wrong?
I can't do what you want. I'm a Christian.
If you cannot bring yourself to admit that God is dead, then you will need to defend the antithesis.
Think of Jesus as my friend.
You think Jesus is God?
I don't want to disappoint him. So your acceptance of this challenge may be the only meaningful exposure to God and Jesus they'll ever have. See, to me, he's not dead. I don't want anyone to get talked out of believing in him just because this professor thinks they should.
Mr. Wheaton, are you ready?
We're going to put God on trial.
Do you think you're smarter than me, Wheaton? Do not try to humiliate me in front of my students. In that classroom, there is a God. I'm him.
This experiment is over. You get to decide who the most important person in your life is. Me, Professor Radisson.
But I have to do this thing. Like it's something that God wants me to do. I can't just turn away from it.
You just want to ensnare them in your primitive superstition.
What I want is for them to make their own choice. That's what God wants.
You have no idea how much I'm going to enjoy failing you.
Yeah, but who are you really looking to fail? Me or God?
God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion.
Science supports his existence. You know the truth. So why do you hate him? It's a very simple question. Why do you hate God?
God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion.
Hello, and welcome to another Catholic Movie Monday here on Catholicism Wow. So today we're going to be talking about the 2014 movie God's Not Dead. God's Not Dead is basically the story of a college freshman named Josh Wheaton, not Joss Whedon, Josh Wheaton, and his run-ins with a atheist professor who it requires everybody in his philosophy class to start out on the first day signing a document that they write up themselves that basically just says God is dead. And if you don't sign the document, you lose like 60% of your grade. Never mind that that's seriously not how college works. But being a good Christian boy, Josh refuses to sign this document to make the public statement that God is dead. And because of this, the philosophy professor, played by Kevin Sorbo from Hercules: The Legendary Journeys, he decides that in spite of the fact that he started the class saying there will be no debate on this topic, he requires Josh to defend the position that God's not dead. God's Not Dead is not the worst movie ever made, but it's not a particularly good movie. The problems that I have with this movie are, while sometimes they do make very sound, very good, very Christian points, like the Willie Robertson scene.
Why do you wear those heels?
What's wrong with them?
You're too tall. You're taller than me.
Enough to handle it?
Just saying, I don't want to be the short guy at the prom.
Mr.
With this super
Robertson.
tall.
Hi, or should I call you Willie?
You can call me Willie.
Amy Ryan. I vlogged the new left. Can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure. Fire away. This is my wife, Corey.
Hi. I know. I'm actually surprised to see you here. I thought you'd be home. Barefoot and pregnant.
I haven't been barefoot and pregnant in a really long time. I do kind of miss those days.
Yeah. You want to start again? We can try.
No.
You've made a fortune selling devices that are designed to lure waterfowl to their death.
I guess when you say you, you're referring to the whole group of my family, which would be y'all. You can just change it to y'all. That'd be an easier expression. That way it'll get everybody in there.
So, y'all have made a fortune. Isn't that right?
We're doing all right. We can certainly buy bigger tires on our trucks and four-wheelers to get out in the mud with, so life is good.
What makes you think you have the moral right to go around maiming and killing innocent animals?
Hey, look, let's just get one thing straight. I ain't maiming nothing. Whatever I see and I aim at, I shoot. When I shoot it, I kill it, and then I eat it.
So you do kill those ducks?
Of course I do. What we're gonna do, cook them while they're still moving around? That would be cruel.
That'd be bad.
So this isn't an act. You're actually proud of what you do.
Of course I am. Why would I do it if I'm not proud of it?
And you go along with everything he says?
We've been married for 20 years. I don't go along with everything he says, but on the things that matter, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
So what do you say to people who are offended by your show, not just because of the hunting, but because you openly pray to Jesus in every episode?
Hey, we're not trying to offend anybody, all right? If they don't want to watch the show, they can turn the channel. As far as my praying to Jesus, my life and my whole eternity belongs to God. All this stuff is temporary. Money, fame, success, temporary. Even life is temporary. Jesus, that's eternal. Jesus said this, whoever acknowledges me before men, he will acknowledge before the Father in heaven. Whoever disowns me, I'll disown him to the Father. Now those words are written in red, so they're important.
And that's it?
That's it. That's what we're going with. Pretty simple, isn't it?
Thanks for your time.
Come on, let's go do some acknowledging.
All right.
You're welcome to join us.
No thanks. I'm good. Thank you.
Ah. Who was that lady?
Most of the time, characters are played as straw man caricatures, and they're not actually real people. At least they don't come across as real people. Kevin Sorbo's character, the atheist philosophy professor, is depicted as somebody that has a deep-seated hatred and animosity for a God that he doesn't believe in. And while there are atheists that do believe this way, again, stereotypes exist for a reason. This isn't the right way to reach people. And this movie comes off much more as preaching to the choir rather than trying to reach people with the gospel, which is a problem that I have with this film. And it's a problem that I have with a lot of Christian movies, especially those made by evangelical Protestants, which this one definitely is. And his debates with, which they're not really debates, they're just Josh giving his case, and the last 15 minutes of 3 consecutive classes. And there's really very little interaction, although sometimes there is interaction with Josh and the students, in which the students ask tough questions and Josh tries to give answers. But the biggest problem with the arguments in this movie is that they try to make arguments that I'm not sure the writer of this film really even understood himself. And they come across as weak and flimsy. And again, unless you're already predisposed to believe in God, they're not going to be very convincing. And a lot of them are going to be laughable. This movie also loses its focus a lot with several different side plots where, again, everybody is played as a straw man caricature. there's a Muslim girl who seems to be very interested in the Christian faith and is leaning more towards that. We see her reading the Christian Bible. We see her listening to Christian music. And she lives in a very conservative Muslim household with, unfortunately, a father that's depicted as not just controlling, but also abusive. And I don't think that paints a very charitable caricature of Muslims. And that's just what you get. The movie also features Dean Cain from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. And Dean Cain is also another, they don't describe him as an atheist per se. He's just not a religious guy. He's just a guy that never thinks about God. God has never entered his radar. And much like the Kevin Sorbo character, he comes off as just mean and heartless. And every character in this movie that doesn't believe in God is just an awful, awful person. And again, if you're trying to reach people, that's not really the way to do it. Not only that, but the Christian characters are painted as, humble and good, and it's just, everything is one-sided. It's a really poorly written movie as far as the characters go. One of the biggest problems with the arguments in this movie is that the screenwriter didn't seem to understand what the affirmative position of the debate should have been. Josh's position should have been. It shouldn't have been, and even though they acknowledge at the beginning, the Josh Wheaton character acknowledges at the beginning of the debate, at the beginning of his first opening statement, let's say, even though he acknowledges that proving the existence of God beyond a reasonable doubt isn't a possibility, that seems to be what the arguments are trying to do, is to at least defeat atheism. And it shouldn't have been a debate it shouldn't have been a case to defeat atheism. It should have been a case for why a belief in God is reasonable. And I think if they'd have taken that approach, they could have come up with some more cogent arguments. The arguments used are also pulled from a lot of early Catholic church fathers, Thomas Aquinas. They name drop George Lemaitre, who was not a church father, but he was the originator of the Big Bang Theory. And they completely leave out the fact that he was a Catholic priest. And that's another thing that this movie does, being made by evangelical Protestants, is that it takes, it makes Catholic arguments that, again, the screenwriter didn't understand. And if he would, the arguments would have been a lot better. But he also doesn't give credit to where those arguments came from, which was early Catholic theologians. This is a very anti-Aquinas movie. Thomas Aquinas, if you read the Summa Theologica, if you read a lot of St. Thomas Aquinas's works, he tried to build the best argument he could against his opponents. He tried to make his opponents, he tried to make their arguments for them, and then proceed to defeat a very well thought out argument against his position. This movie doesn't do that at all. This movie just makes caricatures. This movie just makes straw man. This movie just makes fun and is completely uncharitable. And then, of course, we find out near the end of the movie that Kevin Sorbo's character actually does have a hate and an animosity for God. And we're explaining this because he watched someone he loved die before his eyes. So he blames God for everything bad and evil in the world. And this actually comes up in the debate while Josh is making his case. And never once do they mention the real reason why evil exists in the world. Evil exists in the world because we live in a fallen creation. And that's just the rock bottom truth of it. They say that God allows evil so that man can have free will. And in a way, that's true. God made it possible for Adam and Eve to be disobedient because he wanted man to have a choice. But because Adam and Eve were disobedient, we live in a broken creation. We live in a broken world. And so, not everything that's wrong in the world can be laid at the feet of God. Yes, God allows things to happen. He wills bad things to happen with his passive will, and that he allows them to happen, but he doesn't actually will them to happen. He doesn't send natural disasters. Natural disasters just happen because we live in a broken creation. People die, babies get cancer, horrible things happen because we live in a broken creation. And that's an argument that unfortunately this movie doesn't make. And again, I'm not even sure the screenwriter understood why these bad things happen. Anybody that's even remotely familiar with good theological arguments is going to be turned off by this movie. And this movie is definitely made for an evangelical Protestant argument or audience because most of them don't have good theological arguments. That's not to say all of them don't or none of them do. Some of them do. But again, this movie just seems to be preaching to the people that are just going to cheer and not actually think. And this should have been a movie that causes people to think. Because if people thought, then maybe those that are on the fence, those that want to believe in God and just aren't capable of it, which those atheists do exist. John Stossel has said that that's his position, that he wants to believe in God. He just doesn't know how.
I wish I believed in God, but I don't. There may be a God, but I'm not convinced. I was raised Protestant, went to the Congregational Church, studied the Bible. Then I discovered my ancestors were Jewish. I studied the Torah, tried to believe that too, but I just couldn't get there. I want to believe because I see the peace that religion brings many of you. Most of you, if the polls are correct. Though I don't know about the audience for this show. I envy those of you who believe. Lots of research shows religious people are happier than the rest of us. It could be just because you go to religious services and social networks there bring you friends, and spending more time with friends often brings happiness. But I suspect it's more than that. Believing brings many of you joy, purpose, peace. Good for you.
Those are the people that could have been reached with this movie if the arguments had been a little better. If the characters had been written with more charity and more realism, and less like the Bugs Bunny version of what an atheist is, or what a non-religious person is, or what a conservative Muslim father is. God's Not Dead can be entertaining if you can look past all of those things. And it could be worth a watch. But I would encourage you, if you're going to watch this movie, not to get caught up in the rah, rah, go team aspect of it, and actually allow yourself to think. And maybe you can look at Josh's arguments, which on the surface make sense, but won't hold up to scrutiny. And maybe you can actually look into where those arguments came from and get a fuller understanding of what those arguments should have been instead of what they are. So if you're interested in this movie, it is available for free on YouTube. I'm not going to recommend or unrecommend it. I mean, it's worth watching. I don't hate it as a movie. I hate it as an evangelical tool, though, because it doesn't do that. And I feel like a movie like this, that should have been its purpose. Not to just dunk on atheists, and not to just dunk on Muslims, and not to just say, hey, look, we have Willie Robertson in our movie, and we have the Newsboys in our movie. I will say the song God's Not Dead by the Newsboys is the best part of this movie.
My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring.
But if you're inclined at all to watch it for free here on YouTube. Give it a look. There are 4 movies in this series, so I don't know if I'm going to do all 4 of them. I still haven't seen the newest one, the 4th one. The second one I will definitely do because I thought the second one was a little bit better than this one in the arguments that it makes. But God's Not Dead 2 had a different agenda than this one, and this movie just seemed to dunk on atheists and anybody that's not us. This movie just wanted to dunk on the not us, and that's not an effective way to evangelize. So everybody, that's all that I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. If you like this video, share it with your friends, share it in your social media groups. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. Make sweet, sweet love to the notification bell. Once again, everybody, thank you for joining me. Go in peace and have a nice day.